Hello everybody from across the world, and today we're here to talk about what do video games and food have in common. Come on, there's gotta be something! Think! There's nothing, guys! There's nothing!
I love video games. And I love food. So what do you get when you put them together? A recipe for disaster, that's what. But in all seriousness, you would actually be shocked to find out how many times food and video games have been associated with each other. Whether it's limited food products to promote new games, video games made to promote food companies and brands, and of course, food in video games.
Since I have an uncontrollable love for both food and video games, it made sense to talk about both of them at the same time. I hope this is making sense to all of you guys, otherwise I've just been wasting 10 plus minutes of my life.
Alright, so obviously we have to talk about when food was first introduced into video games. While there's nothing on Wikipedia about it, the first instance I can think of food being in video games would be the original Super Mario Bros. On the NES. In that game, you would eat food which would make you grow bigger.
Imagine if food could help you grow in real life.
The Super Mushroom, one of the most iconic power-ups of all time. I mean, it practically defines what Mario is. Pretty much every Mario game has some version of the Super Mushroom in it, making it one of the most recognizable items in all of video games. Even if you haven't played a Mario game, you definitely know what a Super Mushroom looks like. Now in Mario 1, Lost Levels, and 3, the Super Mushroom works the same. You grab it as Small Mario, and then you turn into Big Mario. However, if you're already playing as Big Mario, grab it as him, and then you get a Fire Flower instead. It's a pretty fun system that's worked well in every game. Until Super Mario 2 USA ruins it. Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, if I had to explain it in one word, it's just weird, man. I mean, it looks like a Mario game, but the gameplay is anything but. Instead of jumping on enemies' heads to attack them like any other Mario game, you instead go to the ground and pick up vegetables and throw them at them. I mean, at least it keeps to the theme of food in video games. And yes, there's still mushrooms in this game, and yes, you do use them as Small Mario to turn into Big Mario, but first off, there's no Fire Flower in this game, and second, there's also a heart system now, meaning you don't really need to use mushrooms at all, defeating the whole purpose. But at least in Mario 3 and World, they returned back to the regular power-up system. Although I wish they kept the vegetable thing, that actually was pretty cool. But Mario isn't the only platforming star that utilizes food as its big identity. The Donkey Kong Country series is practically known for the amount of times it just spews bananas all over your screen. I do find it strange, however, that it took them this long to implement bananas into a Donkey Kong game. But hey, it's whatever, I guess. At least other Nintendo-made Donkey Kong games, such as Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, use more than just bananas as the interesting fruits of the game. Well, that's enough talking about food in platforming games. I mean, I could continue on with the 20-minute debate of why I think honeycombs from Banjo-Kazooie are the messiah of video game foods, but we're on a timer, damn it!
That's a clock.
Damn it!
We've talked a lot about games that feature food, but we haven't yet talked about games that are only about food. Yes, I'm of course talking about cooking games. Games all about preparing virtual food that you just wish you could eat. Now there's surprisingly a lot of type of cooking games out there. If you're into the more realistic stuff, then Cooking Simulator is probably the game for you. So you know Farming Simulator? Yeah, well it's like that, but cooking. And I gotta say, Cooking Simulator actually makes me feel like I'm really cooking. Something I've never been able to do before. And I gotta say, for something that could have been easily made, Cooking Simulator is quite in depth with the way you actually prepare food. But if you're someone who's more into the fun type of games, then Overcooked is probably the game for you. Overcooked is a multiplayer party game where the objective is to work alongside your friends to prepare multiple dishes under a strict time limit. Now while the premise of this game sounds simple, it's topped together with its colorful and cartoony visuals and going across these creatively designed kitchens. But the challenge of the game comes from trying to work alongside your friends, as often everyone's just trying to do their own thing, which leads to chaos on the kitchen floors. And I think that multiplayer is what makes Overcooked. Now you can play the game in single player mode, but I'm not lonely. Oh, and I guess if you want a bad cooking game, Cooking Mama Cookstar would do it for you. But the real question I now have is, who are these cooking games made for exactly? Is it made for those who enjoy cooking? Maybe, but wouldn't they just make real food instead? Or maybe it's made for those who can't cook, such as myself, but then what makes you think they'll be any better making food in video games if they can't even make it in real life? Now we can debate all you want about who cooking games are made for, but we have a lot more food games to talk about. Now we've talked about video games, food in video games, food video games, and now food video games. Games made for the sole purpose of promoting companies' food products and or brands. Now to a lot of people, these games can look off-putting, but to my surprise, a lot of these games are quite decent. Cool Spot is probably a good example of this. Being a side-scrolling platformer released on the Mega Drive/Genesis and the SNES in the mid-90s already gave it a lot of mass appeal. In case you're wondering, Cool Spot was the mascot of 7-Up back in the 90s, and mascots were the thing back then, so it only made sense why he'd be put in a video game. And I gotta say, Cool Spot isn't that bad. Now, it's nothing amazing or anything, but I do think it has some appeal to it. Now, Cool Spot himself has such a nice, charming, simple design, and is very expressive, especially in-game. And the level design of this game is quite good. Now, again, it's nothing amazing or anything, but from the few levels I have played, I've quite enjoyed myself. But Cool Spot isn't the only soda mascot of the 90s. There's of course the infamous Pepsi Man! Now, Pepsi Man has received sort of a cult following in recent years, as it's been talked about non-stop on the internet, whether it's the theme song, the video game, or the character itself. So the game begins and we just see a guy drinking the hell out of a Pepsi can. Game starts and it's nothing like I've ever imagined. So instead of being a 3D platformer like I would have imagined, it's instead an endless runner type game, you know, like Subway Surfers. So I guess it's like a Pepsi shortage around the world and it's up to you to deliver Pepsi to specific locations. I don't know really. Yeah, this game is pretty weird. I mean, especially when it cuts back to that guy drinking Pepsi, like, we get it, he likes Pepsi. The only saving grace of this game will be the insanely catchy theme song that plays in every level. Pepsi Man! But other than that, Pepsi Man, yeah, it's just weird. It's weird.
Yeah, I'm just gonna stick to Coke, thank you very much.
And if you think that's weird, well guess what? Burger King made their own video game. You sneak up to people and give them burgers. That's it. It's about 3 hours long. That's all you do. Gameplay rarely changes. That's it. That's the whole game. That's all you do. That's it. Oh, we've talked about a lot of games, haven't we? But if there's one franchise left that I think represents food in video games perfectly, it's probably the Kirby franchise. I mean, the entire series is about a guy who eats people to absorb them and get their abilities. And you know, besides the whole consuming of people, the Kirby series has real food in it. And out of all the games I've looked at today, this series has the best looking video game food I've ever seen. I mean, the series is known for its beautiful art, so it makes sense why the food looks so good. I mean, in the game Kirby Superstar, there's a whole mode called Gourmet Race, where it's you racing around with your enemy to see who can finish the race while also collecting the most amount of food. So it's safe to say that the Kirby series has the best example of food in video games.
Well, I'm so glad we finally got to talk about food in video games. And of course, we can't forget the most important lesson we learned today, which of course is Coke's better than Pepsi.